81% want to age in their home or in a smaller home. But then we asked people whether their home is suitable. And most were not suitable for aging, either now or perhaps not in the future.
Welcome to another episode of A Closer Look across the Village Media Network and wherever you get your favorite podcast. Derek Turner is here, so is Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Weather note to start the program this evening. I read somewhere yesterday that the province of Ontario this weekend is going to be the coldest place on the planet.
Really? On Earth?
Look, man, it's the internet. Can't be wrong.
It's got to be right.
It's like minus 51 somewhere, and I can't remember for the life of me where.
Oh, it is bloody cold out there.
It is, yeah.
Bundle up. But for the record, how many times we complain about this basement studio in the summertime when it's like feels like it's 800 degrees? I'll take that.
Yeah. So bundle up. Yesterday on the show, funny story, we had Peter Donolo on, and we recorded yesterday morning. Peter, great guy, great storyteller, smart too. But one of the things that he said that Prime Minister Carney needed to do next was address the nation following the wonderful speech in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Yeah, he did just that. So in between us airing Peter's interview at 7 o'clock, the Prime Minister did address the nation before the cabinet retreat in Quebec City. Lots of reaction to this, right? And you know, some people are saying, you know, Carney went too far, that you know, we're going to feel Trump's wrath now, which we're kind of seeing now. I mean,
sure.
Trump had some words for him.
Yep.
And there's people who are saying, no, he did the right thing. We need to call out a schoolyard bully when we see it. People are free to their opinions. They will see. Time will tell what actually happens. But I think the thing that struck me what Peter said was about how we've been hearing this from others too, that we're in for a period of Canadian history which we haven't been in a long time, where we're going to need patience and we're going to need to make some sacrifices.
Right.
It's not going to be easy. It didn't really feel like it hit us very hard in terms of, you know, the job numbers are still good in Canada, the stock markets were good, but we're going to be in for some rough times. And now that sort of the Prime Minister has said what he said in Davos, there will be ramifications for that, right? How it will impact our ongoing trade negotiations, not just this trade war, but with the renegotiation of our free trade agreement with the United States. All these things are kind of hanging in the balance now, right? So it depends how hard the Trump administration wants to come down on Canada for what the Prime Minister said. So I think, you know, the fact that he said that and we had to be ready for that is, I don't think, something that I'm necessarily prepared for, or most people in Canada are prepared for.
Yeah.
So that's a big question for me. And I think the other question is the one we talked about yesterday, which is the Prime Minister continually saying that, you know, what America could take away from us in terms of trade, we can get back ourselves by doing things better in the country and making new partnerships abroad. I don't know if that's up for debate too, and I think that's another kind of time will tell discussion. But I do appreciate the feedback. I do appreciate that people have a lot of strong feelings on this. If you read the comments on the podcast, it goes back and forth. There's lots of people who feel different ways. And I guarantee we'll be talking about this next week in some way, because it's going to be an evolving situation. We forget too that the president just celebrated his first year back in office. He's got 3 more to go.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that are going to happen.
All right, let's get to tonight's program. The National Institute on Aging is out with a new survey that certainly has some interesting data, to say the least. Yeah,
people are feeling lonely and broke. And feeling down about
other than that, it's great.
Yeah, the prospects of getting older, which is, I guess, a change. People have not felt this bad about getting older. I'm of the belief that people are just feeling bad in general about so many different things, and this kind of just,
absolutely,
it drags it into that as well. But we are going to talk tonight about this survey, about how Canada's elderly population is feeling, some discussions about why they're not maybe in the best financial situation they might have been 10 years ago. A whole bunch of questions. Another, I don't want to say negative topic we're going to talk about, but it's certainly not, it doesn't make you feel great.
And we're going to do that with Talia Bronstein, the Director of Policy at the National Institute on Aging. For years, Canadians' feelings about aging barely budged. Then in just 1 year, It seems like something snapped. A new national survey of Canadians over 50 shows optimism about getting older has dropped sharply, with more people saying they can't afford to retire, feel lonely, and worry about their health care. To help us make sense of what's changed and what it means for the future of aging in this country, we're joined by Talia Bronstein, the Director of Policy at the National Institute on Aging. Talia, welcome to the show. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Talia, we'll get into the survey in a second, but first, tell us a bit about your organization and what you folks do.
Sure. So I'm from the National Institute on Aging. We are a research institute housed at Toronto Metropolitan University, and we really look at trying to make Canada a place where older adults can age in dignity, independence, and feel valued in society.
Let's dive in here, Talia. What changed between 2024 and last year that made people feel noticeably worse about getting older?
Yeah, it was a concerning trend that we saw all of a sudden, this drop in the feelings of positivity towards aging. It had been a very consistent level of optimism around aging for the past 3 years, and then all of a sudden a 5-point drop. And I think there's probably a lot of factors playing into that. One is kind of the context that we're living in. You know, it's a time of geopolitical uncertainty, economic uncertainty. I think that can impact people's feelings about the future. Then we also see in some of our other indicators areas where older adults are struggling with their material circumstances. And then the third impact, I think, is around cultural norms. How are older adults seen in society? So we also ask questions around ageism and how people are viewing older adults. And I think that can also impact your personal views towards aging.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. You mentioned about the geopolitics and what's going on around the world, because we're all kind of feeling less optimistic this day. When I read that in the survey, can you speak a little more to that, Talia? I mean, that's kind of the general sense of feel around a lot of people, the way we feel. Is that part of this?
We didn't test it specifically, but from what we've seen in other polling, that definitely maps on to what's happening broadly in Canada. As you said, we're all sort of struggling with that feeling of unrest and uncertainty about what the future has in store for us. And so I think it's definitely a possible predictor. We didn't test it specifically, though. So I would love to see more data out there looking at older adults specifically in this moment, and how the political context affects their outlook. Because, you know, in many ways, older adults, especially at the older end of the spectrum, they might be saying, you know, they might be thinking more short term. What does the next 1 to 5 years look like? Because that might be their lifespan that they're expecting. On the flip side, you know, I think there's a world in which older adults have the benefit of having gone through some difficult times politically. So that might actually balance out people's perspective. So I think it's something that merits more exploration. It's not something we explored specifically in our survey, but I'd love to see that in someone else's research.
That's a great point. Thank you. In terms of financial security, too, the survey showed there's a bit fewer people are feeling financially secure as they head into their older age, head into retirement. What's behind that, do you think?
So this is part of a longer term trend. So our survey showed a drop in the proportion of people who said that they were financially able to retire at their desired time. And now it's under 1 in 3 who said that they can afford to retire when they're planning to. And this is part of a long-term trend in Canada where we've seen an erosion of employer-provided pensions. And so people are having to rely more and more on personal financing of their retirement, as well as government income supports. And so it puts a bigger burden on the individual to save for their retirement. And as we've seen, the cost of living, you know, in the past 10, 20 years has gone up dramatically. And so people aren't necessarily able to put aside the savings that they need. Our survey uncovered that 1 in 5 have only saved $5,000 for retirement.
Wow.
So these are individuals who are going to, by and large, have to rely on Canada's publicly funded retirement system, old age security, guaranteed income supplement. Perhaps they also have contributed to the Canada Pension Plan, in which case they'll be eligible for that. But, you know, we want to make sure that those systems are not the first line of defense. They're meant to be the last line of defense for people, but instead people just aren't able to save enough on their own.
Talia, let's stay with the retirement theme for a second here. If you're someone in your 50s listening or watching right now, what's the biggest financial misconception that those folks still have to think and worry about where retirement is concerned?
So our research shows at the NIA, our Director of Financial Security Research, Bonnie Jean McDonald, just completed a big paper series that I hope every older adults or entering their older years reads. Because I think one of the biggest missed opportunities that people don't think about is when to claim their CPP, if they've been contributing to CPP. Most people automatically take it when they're eligible. So either at 60 or some people at 65, but there's actually a huge incentive to delay taking CPP because the amount you get gets higher the more you delay. Now, this isn't an option for everybody. If you cannot afford to delay it because you have no savings, no RRSPs to rely on, for example, not a good strategy. If you're eligible for the guaranteed income supplement, this is not a good strategy for you. However, for people who can afford to wait, doing so, in essence, gives you a much higher guaranteed lifetime pension that's indexed to inflation. It's incredibly safe and secure. And I think people aren't getting the financial education that they need, but it's actually more than that. It's actually, the research shows that it's a fear of missing out. It's a fear of taking it too early delaying it and missing out on benefits if they happen to pass away before they sort of break even on what they would have gotten. Now, so there's some behavioral challenges there.
Yeah. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Talia, but I think you're right. If you wait till you're like 72, you get like 42% more income. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it's a hugely, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head either, but for the average Canadian, our numbers show you could be missing out on $100,000 of retirement savings just by delaying. So, it's hugely advantageous, and it's something people should, again, it's not the right move for everybody, but I just wish that older adults were spending more time thinking about and getting good quality advice on when to take CPP, because it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make when it comes to retirement. And people just they're just sort of signing on the dotted line saying, like, sure, yeah, money, I'll take it. Great. Without thinking the implications.
We've already explored the debate in your mind is so big, right? Because you're not sure, no one has a crystal ball how long they're going to live and what the right move is. So it's a possible decision. So you're right, they should get advice. What other kind of advice do you have for people who are listening to this podcast today and are entering that phase where they're aging, they're ready to retire? What's another couple big pieces of advice?
Yeah, I would say on the more social well-being side of things, our survey shows that a huge proportion of older adults are socially isolated and are feeling lonely. So 43% were at high risk of social isolation and 57% were experiencing loneliness. And I think what people don't recognize about this is that actually has impacts on your health. It can lead to premature mortality. And so finding ways to stay connected is critically important as someone ages. And that can be in any variety of ways, right? It can be through going to group activities. It can be through just having phone calls with close friends or family. It can be volunteering somewhere. There's a number of different ways to stay socially engaged, but having social connections is not just about your social well-being. It actually translates into your physical well-being and your longevity as well.
I worry that's part of a bigger trend too. I don't mean to keep coming back to that same point, but we live in a more lonely world, right? Because some people are entering that phase of, that we're talking about here. They have grown up and they have they've had electronics in their hand. They've done that. Loneliness is an issue we're dealing with across the spectrum, right? Again, in terms of advice, what's a big of advice for someone who's in their 60s right now and saying, I'm feeling really lonely? What's something they can actually do today to help with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should pursue their interests, right? There's almost a group or an opportunity for every kind of person. If it's playing chess, if it's volunteering, if it's going on a walking group with people, whatever it is, there's something for everybody out there. I think the hardest step is putting yourself out there. So you just have to kind of take the first step, and then you realize probably it wasn't actually as overwhelming as maybe you thought. But I'd say reach out to your local community, stay local, see what's going on in your neighborhood, and start there.
In terms of the primary care crisis, how much is that impacting what you're seeing in your surveys in terms of the fact that there's still so many Ontarians that don't have a family physician?
Yeah. So our survey showed a bit of a good news story here, that we saw the proportion of people who had regular primary care providers increased this year. However, we're only at 68% in our survey, and that's nationally across Canada. I believe the Ontario stat on that was slightly above average for Canada. So Ontario came out a little bit ahead. That's still falling short of where we should be. So I think there's a long way to go. We also asked people about whether they could access the care they needed. So not just, being rostered to a physician, but could you actually access the care that you needed when you needed it? And 70% said that they could. So again, we're seeing a gap. 30% are saying that they couldn't access the healthcare that they needed. And the biggest barriers were not being able to get appointments being rescheduled, challenges getting referrals. So all of those things, again, this is not unique to older adults. This is something I think we're all facing in Canada, where we have this beautifully publicly funded health system, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that we're getting access to the care that we need when we need it.
That's a great
And that, of course, is going to impact our health overall.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also think of the volunteer issue, right, Talia, because we hear a lot about how organizations across the province are struggling to find volunteers, right? And you have this whole cohort of people who are talking about feeling lonely and not having things to do. What more can be done to kind of connect those two things?
Yeah, volunteering is definitely a win-win for older adults. It can lead to that social engagement and social connection. For organizations who are in need of support, it can really provide that sort of boots on the ground support. And interestingly, one thing we see is that older adults who volunteer are often very involved in volunteering in spaces with older adults. And so, that's a nice opportunity to start friendships, encourage other people to volunteer. So it is, I do wish that there were more connections. Sometimes I think people need a little bit of system navigation. I know my own mother recently moved to a different city. She's in her late 70s and she was looking for a volunteer opportunity. And it took a while for her to actually kind of land something. She sent out lots of emails. She didn't always get a response. And the reason for that is because most nonprofits, charities are just on the brink of, one crisis after the next. So I don't blame them at all. It's simply trying to ensure that they actually even have the capacity to take on volunteers is a challenge in and of itself.
It's a great story. Thanks. You're immersed in this world. You work for this organization, and you spend your time thinking about the aging population in Canada. Is there an anecdote you can share with us, or somebody you've spoken to that really exemplifies the kind of issues you're talking about in this report?
Yeah, well, our survey, it is anonymous, so we don't unfortunately get to see kind of the faces behind those numbers, but I can tell you a story of an organization that's working on the ground, and it's called Men's Sheds. And this is an organization, a national organization, that is working in communities for men to develop both physical and metaphoric sheds where men can come together and do joint hobbies. Whether that's building something, there's also, other activities and interests people can connect over and talk about mental health and talk about social connection and build those relationships. And it's an organization that I think is addressing a huge need, which is the need for social connection amongst men. That is not something historically that has been talked about very much. And so I think it's a really important initiative people can check out.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Talia, before we let you go, is there anything that we didn't cover from the survey or anything else that you want to bring up?
Well, you didn't ask me my favorite, so I'm going to tell you.
All right.
We asked where people want to age, and the vast majority want to age in their home. 81% want to age in their home or in a smaller home. But then we asked people whether their home is suitable, and most were not suitable for aging, either now or perhaps not in the future. We also asked people if they've made modifications or plans to modify their home, and most had not. And then we asked about home and community care services, and people are saying there's a huge challenge accessing these services. So what's happening is we're seeing a disconnect between the aspirations of older adults to remain in their homes and their communities, and the reality that the systems and structures aren't supporting them to do so. Only 3% want to end up in long-term care, but that's where a lot of people are going to end up if we keep on this trajectory. So I think, in terms of messaging to older adults, thinking about, okay, what is the future you want for yourself and how are you going to get there? Because it does take advanced planning and thinking about kind of building those support systems, both the physical space that you need, whether that's renovation, whether that's trying to rent an apartment that's accessible, and then also building that care system surrounding yourself in terms of caregiving, in terms of broader supports.
Is there? This is a totally dumb question. You won't want to talk to us again after this. But when you think about it, I think of like communities in the United States, for example, that they have full retirement communities. I don't feel like that really exists in Ontario. Is that on developers perhaps, or like because I think if you're in your 50s or your 60s, you're thinking you're ready to. That's when you should be thinking about downsizing. Do those things exist, Talia, at a wide scale?
They do exist. They absolutely do exist. But what's really interesting is there are some things called NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities. Now, these are communities that weren't purpose-built for older adults, but they have, just by circumstance, a high concentration of older adults living there. So it could be an apartment building where it's just the vast majority of tenants happen to be older adults, or it could be like a small city block where it's just a high concentration of older adults. And these are an incredible opportunity for service provision, right? Because you get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of delivering services to where people are actually already located. And as far as social isolation and loneliness go, again, it's a great opportunity to bring those residents together for various activities and opportunities to engage with one another. So that's another area that at the NIA we are working on, trying to, how do you identify and tap into some of these resources, because some of these buildings, if you think of just a regular apartment building, they don't have a communal space for people to hang out in. So how can we facilitate that? Are there retrofits that can be made in these buildings to enable that? Or are there, is there a community center nearby that there could be, a shuttle going to, those kinds of things to tap into those naturally occurring retirement communities?
Fascinating. As I get older and I can already feel my brain going, my body's long gone. I try to learn something new every day. That's the way I try to keep my brain going. And I learned the term NORC today. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that, Talia. That's awesome.
You just want to drive up and down a gated community in a golf cart.
That's right.
That's all you
That's the goal in life. We can get there.
All right. There's Talia Bronstein, the Director of Policy at the National Institute on Aging. Talia, appreciate your time tonight. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks so much for having me.
Talia mentioned the 3% wanting to live out their years in long-term care. If you've watched this show, that 3% might want to rethink that.
Yeah, it's expected, I guess, that people only 3%, but it's crazy there actually are 3% that want to live out alone.
Yeah.
I think they're looking for that social, the NORC. That's, I'm telling you.
That's where we're headed.
That's our next podcast when we retire. The podcast will be called NORC.
I like it.
And it'll be me, you, and Derek in a 3-bedroom bungalow. It'd be perfect.
Golf carts all around.
Pool all our resources together. 3 golf carts all pimped out. It'd be perfect.
You see the 3 of us racing down the street.
It'd be amazing. But I hate to lecture because I'm not perfect either. But the biggest message is if you're in your 20s today, please put $100 a month away into something. But save your money when you can find a few bucks. Because it just what did she say? 1 out of 5 said they had $5,000.
Can you imagine?
But that's a lot of people are in that position. The cost of living is out through the roof. People are struggling to make the week by week expenses.
Yeah,
it's hard. But if you can find that few bucks to put away, I mean, look at the wealthy barber, man. You pay yourself first, right?
Yep.
You can read that whole book. That's the one piece of advice that he's been saying his whole career, and that's the one that matters, right? Try to pay yourself a little bit because before you know it, you're going to be old like us, and that's crazy, man.
Clock's still ticking.
I hear you. Anyway, 3-bedroom bungalow. I'll start looking. We'll have our listings. We'll talk on Monday what kind of listings we have.
Let's get on the Google, see what's out there.
Let's go NORC.
All right,
Google
let's
NORC.
go NORC. Closer look at villagemedia.ca. If you want to NORC with us, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Closer Look Podcast. I'm trying to say it with a straight face. Closerlookpodcast.ca. Sign up. We'll send you episodes each and every day. All right, that's it for us this week. It was a good one, and as always, we appreciate your time. For Derek Turner, who makes it all happen for us, and Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. Goodness knows it is going to be cold across the province of Ontario. Bundle up. We'll see you Monday at 7 right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.